Welcome to Television Sydney News. I'm Gemma Seymour. It's great to have you with us. In this week's bulletin, a new book shares the stories of Granville train disaster survivors. The Sydney Blue Sox are in the thick of pre-season action, and a vintage car owner delighted his pride and joy will appear on the big screen. But first, police are reminding bushwalkers to think before they trek after 7 separate rescues were conducted in the Blue Mountains last month. 16 people were rescued in bushland in just over 2 weeks, prompting a warning that lives were being put at risk.
On some occasions they just haven't taken into account the prevailing conditions. Obviously we've had a lot of rain. With rain comes a bit of a rise in creek levels and water, etc., fast flowing creeks, and people just aren't prepared or expecting that sort of activity when they get into some of these areas. Take adequate supplies and provisions for what you're doing. Register intentions with either friends, family or police. The use of emergency beacons is recommended when you're going outdoors in a remote area, and know your route and stick to it.
The state government has included Campbelltown's protected scenic hills in a list of possible spots for major housing development, and Campbelltown Council is furious. The Sydney Morning Herald reported this week that the government had bypassed councils and invited developers to nominate land suitable for housing, which would then be assessed by a committee. Mayor Analak Chanthavong said the hills were strictly off limits to developers. He wants the government to honour its promise to return planning powers to councils. The scenic hills sites were just 2 of many across Sydney that were included on the list of potential housing areas. Sutherland Shire Council will spend nearly $130,000 to build a walkway through the Royal National Park at Mainbar so residents in the west can access the general store and bushfire station in the east. But Councillor Stephen Simpson says he's astounded that ratepayers' money is being spent in the National Park to build a facility which is not under council control. He wants money to be spent on a footpath on Old Ferry Road in Illawong. The National Parks and Wildlife Service is appealing to the public for information after a swamp wallaby was found dead from a suspected gunshot wound in Springwood on Australia Day. A joey weighing 100 grams was found crawling beside its dead mother on Springwood Golf Course. It was cared for but died 24 hours later. Penalties of up to $11,000 and 6 months jail apply for killing native wildlife. If you have any information, you can call the numbers on the screen. Holroyd's mayor came out strongly this week against critics who have labelled her new public forum rules as an attack on free speech. Residents can now only read a 25-word written statement during council meetings instead of the usual 5 minutes they were allowed to speak. Mayor Yvette Whitfield said the new code would allow more free speech by increasing understanding. A new book will share the stories of survivors, rescuers and those who lost loved ones during the Granville train disaster in 1977. The book has been released to mark the 35th anniversary of the tragedy. 83 people were killed when the packed commuter train derailed and crashed into the bridge at Bold Street. Gary Raymond was working for police rescue when the disaster happened and crawled under the collapsed bridge to search for survivors.
We've done rescues every day, people trapped in cars and trapped in industry, but we've never ever seen anything as large as that.
Mr. Raymond's story is one of those shared in the book created by the Granville Train Disaster Memoriam Foundation.
The book's out and it's fantastic to tell my story because it reassures a lot of the emergency service like police, ambulance, fire and volunteers that if they're suddenly called upon, like we just went into rescue base for another day, and within half an hour, I'm in one of the most biggest disasters that's happened in New South Wales. And so it reassures them that they will do the job.
It sounds like a film script. 2 Macarthur locals spending Australia Day rubbing shoulders with Australian of the Year Geoffrey Rush after winning a short film festival using their iPhone. But for Nicholas Mark and Nicholas Ryan, it was a reality. They started to make their film, The Sum of Our Parts, 3 days before the due date and used their iPhone because they didn't have time to hire or borrow equipment. As the winners of Real Australia competition, they won $4,000 and were invited to the state reception on Australia Day, where they met Rush. The church bell at St Peter's Anglican Church is finally ringing out over Campbelltown's central business district again. The church's 172-year-old clock and bell have been fixed after decades of not working properly. The church's senior minister Nigel Fortescue says the clock may be the oldest colonial clock in Australia, according to the master clockmaker who repaired the clock and bell. The clock and bell were installed in August 1839. John Dykeman of Glenbrook was assured his car named Betty Boop would be in safe hands when it was used late last year for filming in Baz Luhrmann's remake of The Great Gatsby. His 1931 Ford Model A Roadster Deluxe was recommended for the part by the car club he belongs to. The former antiques dealer says he's delighted his car will appear on the big screen.
It was pretty awesome. Yeah, it was pretty awesome to think that, we would be have a movie star in the family, because it's certainly the first time that anything like this has happened to us.
While Betty might struggle on a hill every now and then, Mr Dykeman enjoys taking the vintage car out nearly every day.
Betty's still travelling okay. She'll get along. If we put her on the freeway, she'll do about 85 kilometres an hour.
And you can see the car and many more at the annual automobile picnic at Lura Mall on Saturday, part of the month-long Roaring Twenties and All That Jazz Festival. Now to sport, the Sydney Blue Sox are in the thick of pre-season action following a first-round win over the Adelaide Bite in the Australian Baseball League's playoff series. The Sydney Ball Club is currently battling the Melbourne Aces in a best-of-5 series at Melbourne Showgrounds.
We're playing well, we're hitting the ball, we're catching the ball and we're throwing it really well. So you want momentum this time of year, and I think the Blue Sox are starting to find their straps a little bit.
The winner of the Blue Sox Aces series will then have the difficult task of travelling to Perth to face the hometown Heat, the current holders of the Claxton Shield. Mixed martial arts fighter Bernardo Treco Morgales has secured a multi-fight deal with the Ultimate Fighting Championship and will make his debut in the US on February 15. The 30-year-old moved to the Sutherland Shire from Brazil 5 years ago and has dominated the Australian scene since. Treco has signed a 1-year, 4-fight deal with the UFC and said in January it's not the first time he's tried to get in.
It's kind of hard because everyone in the world wants to be there, all the fights, all the best fights are there. And whenever you feel like to test yourself against the best, that's the place to be. And you gotta know the right people to put you in. Of course you gotta have a good record as well, good reputation. But finally, I got my time.
Treco's UFC call-up has meant he's had to pull out of a fight at the Sharkies Leagues Club this month. Winston Hills schoolgirl Sophie Richardson won 3 gold medals at the Australian Pool Lifesaving Championships in Adelaide. The 13-year-old showed her versatility by winning 3 of the championship's 5 categories in the 50 and 100 metre carry events and the line throw competition. Sophie said she was confident heading into the championships but didn't expect to win. Blacktown Warriors are hoping for their first win in 11 cricket matches when they take on the University of New South Wales this Saturday. The Warriors gave their most impressive batting performance of the first grade cricket season at Rawson Park last weekend, but it wasn't enough with the team going down to Mossman. Former West Indian Test opening bowler Corey Collymore was a standout player with 8 for 59 for the match. And lastly, Tessa Jack Russell has led a colourful and fulfilling life. So after reaching the ripe old age of 16 recently, her owner Beth Moore from Emu Plains put the call out to find who had the oldest dog in Penrith.
I had one in previous years and she got to 17, and when she passed on, the vet at the time said she was the oldest in the area, and I was just curious if Tess was just going to break the record and be the same.
In her heyday, little Tess was a racing champion.
I think our favourite was we took Tess to Wentworth Park. We had a commission as a club to do the entertainment for the greyhound people, and they love the Jack Russells because they race exactly the same way as the greyhounds do, but of course they're in miniature. So the crowd was calling out to me, "We'll bet on the little one."
Lee Cook of South Penrith responded to the call. She's the owner of 19-year-old Australian Silky Terrier Charlie, who is still in good health. Mrs Moore said it had been a friendly contest and showed just how tough little terriers were. And that's all the news we have time for today. For more information on these stories, you can pick up your local Fairfax newspaper. We'll see you next time.